Okay, so now let's take that same 3-mile-an-hour walk and let's add a 5% grade to that. Okay, so once again, if you need to start from the beginning, write out horizontal, vertical, resting, and then total. So if you want to use your numbers from the previous calculation, that's great. If you want to start from scratch, there's nothing to prevent you from doing that. So let's look at your 80.4 speed in meters per minute times 0.1, 8.04 mils per kg per minute. Now we're going to add that grade component on the vertical. So 1.8 is just the constant that's part of the formula, times your speed, and then times your grade. Note that it's 0.05. So we get 7.2 milliliters per kilogram per minute. Then we get the resting component again, 3.5. So add up the total VO2, and so we get 18.7 milliliters per kilogram per minute. So if you need to convert to METs, then divide that by 3.5, and so we get about 5.3 METs. So adding that 5% grade adds about 2 METs. If you remember, was a little over 3 METs with no grade. So now we're at 5 METs. Moderate intensity exercise is generally 3 to 6 METs, up to 6 METs. So we're kind of on, creeping up towards the higher end of moderate intensity. So adding a 5% grade adds 2 METs to the workload, which could be meaningful for your client if you've got somebody who's a clinical patient, heart, pulmonary, or just someone who's senior and very deconditioned. If you're adding a 5% grade, that can add 2 METs to their programming, and that may be very challenging for them to do. Okay, now let's look at running. We mentioned you got to be running 5 miles an hour or higher. Still use the running equation if they are actually running, but they're jogging much slower than that. They're, say jogging at 4.5 miles an hour. So the speed, the horizontal, vertical, and resting. So once again, convert your speed in meters per minute, multiply by 0.2. It takes more work to move on a horizontal surface running versus walking. 0.9 is your constant. That's your flight. It actually takes less work to be in flight running versus walking. And then your resting component stays the same. So horizontal, vertical, and resting. So let's look at running 6 miles an hour. So someone who's running at a pretty good pace, so running 6 miles an hour times 26.8, about 160.8 meters per minute. 0.2 is your constant, 32 milliliters per kilogram per minute. So you're already at 32 milliliters per kilogram per minute. So think back to the VO2 max protocols, the ramp protocols. So they're already pretty high just from running alone. Vertical is 0 because it's a flat surface, 0% grade. 3.5, resting is the same. So basically we have our horizontal, vertical, and resting. The horizontal, the vertical is 0 plus the resting 35.7, and if you need to convert to METs, 3.5 divide by, and you get 10 METs. So basically a 10 MET workload. There are some people you're going to run into, they are not going to even be able to do a 10 MET workload. They don't have the aerobic fitness to even do that, to run 6 miles an hour on a flat grade. Let's look at this with a 5% grade. Same thing as before. If you've got to write it all out all over again and practice that, go right ahead. So horizontal, vertical, and resting. We've already calculated the horizontal and the resting. So now we're looking at the grade. 0.9 times your speed again, 6 miles an hour, and now we're adding that 0.05 for 5% grade. Now if it's 7% grade, multiply by 0.07. 7.2 milliliters per kilogram per minute. And just like before, when we added that 5% grade, we added about 2 mets. So our total VO2, 42.9 milliliters per kilogram per minute, divided by 3.5 milliliters per kilogram to get 12.3 mets. So this is a pretty high energy expenditure, and you have a lot of people that are not going to be doing that. And as I mentioned, it's higher than a lot of people, especially deconditioned people, not people who are fit or athletic, higher than their VO2 max.